most of Torah study is micro-oriented. You look at a pasuk, you tear it to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
You see a difference in a word, and so forth and so forth. So you're working very much on details. Halacha is very much a process that focuses on details, right? Surim usually are in details. We usually talk in terms of mitzvot in very detailed orientation. That's usually how learning goes. If you think back to learning, the way you usually learn is with Gemara and stuff like that. The truth is that there's another side to Torah, which is the broader perspective. The broader perspective being understanding how the details connect into a whole. Holistic perspective. It could be in terms of reading of Chumash. You don't just read the psukim individually, learn the psukim individually. You also recognize that psukim are making up a whole in terms of a story or statement it's trying to make, right? And you look at things from that perspective. One example of looking at things from that perspective, for example, is the Aseret Dibrot. You take this section and you treat it as a section, and then you make a distinction between the first part of the section, the second part of the section. People try to make a distinction between Ben Adam Makom, Ben Adam Chavero, and stuff like that. But then you see the differences in methodology and so on. And sometimes you don't look at the psukim just individually. You look at the psukim as part of the whole picture, the whole package. That's a classic example of it. The truth is in many ways you can't really understand the details unless you have the bigger picture, and in many ways you can't understand the bigger picture without the details. So it's a symbiotic process. So I was saying, like a lot of times our focusing is you have the person read the pasuk, or you have the person starting a Gemara, and the person never even read the Mishnah. He starts the Gemara and starts reading the first Mishnah and going to this and the details and goes this and so forth and so forth, and goes through each detail and so forth and so forth. What happens when you read Tosfos, for example, Tosfos sometimes quotes another Gemara, but a lot of times when Tosfos quotes another Gemara, he's taking another detail and showing how that knowledge from that other detail is significant in understanding this detail. Okay? So the truth is people say, gee whiz, to really understand the details, I have to know a lot more information to understand the details. But the truth is I'm saying that that's one process. You have to know a lot of information to even understand the specific details of one statement. But not only that, you have to try and get the bigger picture as well. So what happens is that if you look in terms of the classical form of education that's mentioned in the Mishnah, it says, I think, what is it? Was it 7 starts or 8 starts Mishnayos and 13? I forget the exact age. I should have seen it. The truth is, you study Mishnah, and then later on, when you're older, you study Gemara. Right? What it says is you have to understand a lot of the information before you can start delving into the pratim.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The point is that what I'm saying is
on a very broad, like Chumash, Mishnah, but like not the detailed stuff.
Or you learn it. You learn it.
Just the words of it,
or information of it.
Yeah,
to get the big picture. Like there's a lot of people that there are places, for example, before they have you learn a Gemara, you learn the Mishnah. You learn the entire Mishnah. Okay, so at least you understand the general principles.
And you can go into the Gemara, but then and then come back to it, and then with detail.
Right. And the fact of the matter is you don't fully understand. Now, the truth is, you read the Mishnah, you get some general principles. You really can't come up with a full policy understanding of the overall perspective. Okay, unless you know the details, and you can't fully understand the details unless you understand unless you have the overall perspective. Now, I use the example of Shul Chakan. Okay? The truth is, the Rabbi says the purpose of Shulchan Aruch, he says from Shulchan Aruch you learn an aspect of rachamim to animals. Okay? And he says that from this mitzvah, we should be kind to animals, because most people understand the mitzvah. And if you read the Chumash, it does seem to say don't take the eggs while the mother's sitting on it. There is an issue of taking eggs while the mother's sitting on it. But the truth is that, so it does seem, if you look at the Chumash, okay, the Chumash and the Rambam Hazari says, the thing is that it really shows callousness to those the mother bird to send away, to just go up there and take the eggs right in front of it when it's freaking out and so forth and so forth. So the truth is, you should send away the mother bird and take away the eggs, and when it comes back to the nest, we'll forget about the eggs, and it won't be so harmful. But the truth of the matter is, if you actually look at the Pratei HaMitzvah, the actual details of the mitzvah, it seems to be that if you come across a mother bird sitting on eggs, specific types of birds sitting on their eggs, you have an obligation, regardless of what you do to the eggs, there's an essay of sending away the mother bird. Okay? Okay, now why is that? Now the truth of the matter is, in the Kabbalah, it seems to say that you send away the mother bird, so the mother bird will go cry, and from its crying, it will open up the Shari Rachamim. Okay? Which leads to an interesting idea that you're supposed to do a cruel act of sending away the mother bird, so the bird cries to open the Shari Rachamim. Okay? But the fact of the matter is that works with much more the details of the Prat. Now the Rambam therefore says in a lot of ways to explain, and he just doesn't say this by Shulchan Aruch, but he says in general that when you find pratim that go contrary to the general principle, he says, okay, that's the way this sometimes looks. There's a lot of times where people sit there and say, the halacha is this way, so he'll sit there and say, don't ask questions from pratim in those certain halachas. That was the Rambam's position. The fact is, though, is that there's generally a tremendous amount of it's actually a difficult topic to work out and connect the pratei of halacha with an overall general broad principle. And it's hard to work these things out and so forth, and sometimes it doesn't fit nicely, and it's difficult and so forth. It's a challenge, but the point is, in our learning, a lot of times we focus so much on our details that we don't know how to really investigate the overall general principles in a truly sophisticated manner. And a lot of times what you get is overall general principles that are usually very simplistic. One of the things that also happens...
What would be an example of that?
A general, overall, easy
so
principle?
We're talking about simplicity, but I can never think of a really good practical example other than sex.
Okay. Overall general principle.
Simplistic, that people really like that.
People throw out simplistic answers to certain things.
Homosexuality.
See, I want to... I want to do this in a way that I don't want to come across too critical. Let me throw out another factor before I answer your question, and that's individual distinction. See, another factor becomes the human being, and human beings can respond to laws in a variety of different ways. Mm-hmm. So what happens is that in policy, if you're taking a policy perspective, you can't always define it, if you're dealing with a human aspect, you also have to recognize that there are different human beings responding to the situations. Therefore, a certain halachic detail may result in a certain response from one human being and may result in a differing response from another human being. So if you're going to come up with a general policy perspective from the Torah, you'd have to sit there and say, wait a second, but on this human being has this effect, this human being has that effect, there might be a different perspective. Let me give you an example that will come across a little bit critical to certain people. In terms of the whole argument for vegetarianism that exists in Jewish vegetarianism. In the Jewish world. So let's say there's arguments. There's a group of people who argue for Jewish vegetarianism, and they argue that really it's best to be a vegetarian. Okay.
From religiously?
From religious
perspective.
From so people like to point to the fact that Rav Kook only ate meat on Shabbos, they say, and so forth. Or there were other people who were vegetarians, and there were other kosher people who were vegetarians, and so forth and so forth. Okay. So their argument is really we should all be vegetarians. Okay, and keeping kosher was sort of like giving into our animalistic drive to eat meat. But really, if we want to be better people, we shouldn't really should be vegetarians. There's that argument out there in the world. Okay, a Jewish vegetarian argument and so forth. And they point to the fact that Adam Rishon wasn't allowed to eat meat at first, and that it only was giving into the weakness of humanity after the Mabul that we were permitted to eat meat, and even the limitations on our allowance to eat meat. The fact
sounds like a negative way of looking at it.
Right, it's for sure. It says, listen, really best if you didn't eat meat, but if you do, whatever. Because Baruch Hu is giving you the listen.
It's allowing it.
It's allowing it, but it's really not best. Okay, that's an argument. It's out there. Okay. And one of the classic arguments is from Noah. The fact is God let Noah eat meat. Okay, so therefore it's only giving into human frailty. Really best if we didn't eat meat. Okay. The point is that there are issues with it. The part of the issue is that there are obligations to eat meat. Okay. Now everyone points to the fact of Yontiv Ein Simcha B'Basar. That's really the basar of the Karbonos, right? The fact of the matter is,
I mean you have to eat it. Just
no, you do have to. No,
you have
to eat the korban. Certain ones. The point is,
vegan do that?
Right. So the fact of the matter is that part of the issue is Karbonos, but when kind of Mashiach comes, they try arguing there won't be animal Karbonos anymore. There'll only be mincha Karbonos. All these arguments. The fact is, though, is that there are a lot of people who ate meat. Who ate meat. There are a lot of people who didn't think it was so bad to eat meat. The truth of the matter is, you have a concept of B'Basar. There's a concept that eating meat, there's an Indian eating meat when there's a simcha, even without the basar, even without the basar of the karbanos. Just an Indian that there's an Indian
that's considered choicest,
more better food, whatever. The truth of the matter is that it comes back to the argument, so on and so forth. But the point is that if you really look at all the perspectives, the Jewish concept on being a meat eater does have a lot of different parts to it. The arguments that are presented of why it's not so great to eat meat do have some validity. The arguments that point to the fact that there's actually a benefit in eating meat or some spiritual value in eating meat also does have its base. So the truth is understanding how we're supposed to look at meat eating and so forth brings up an issue. And a lot of times the answer is, from in a policy perspective, and this is very much in the philosophy of, let's say, Rabbi Soloveitchik, a lot of times it's a complex, inherently conflicting philosophy. That there's this value and that value, and they coexist, and even though they're opposite and so on and so forth. And the truth of the matter is, you get into these issues with Sar Baalei Chaim. The fact of the matter is that there's one concept in Sar Baalei Chaim, that there's no problem of Sar Baalei Chaim that there's any benefit to human beings. So let's say you have the question of testing rabbits for makeup, which was a whole big issue where they used to test makeup on how it affected the eyes and the skin by putting it on I think rabbits particularly, but on animals, and seeing what it caused. And if it caused a lot of problems then we know it wouldn't be good for human beings. And a lot of people got very upset, but it's terrible.
Animal testing.
Right, it's terrible. But the fact of the matter is that from Sar Baalei Chaim, if there was a purpose for doing it, it's not Sar Baalei Chaim. Sar Baalei Chaim is pulling wings off which is what Sar Baalei Chaim doesn't apply to an insect. But the fact is that it's basically
cutting off a piece of the animal.
Of an animal, just for the fun of it, and seeing, let's see what a three-legged dog
should treat animals.
Right. There's a certain thing. Don't do something for fun.
But it's not what people make it up. Right. It's more than just.
But on the other hand, there's another side to it. Animal testing has another problem. There's another concept of Ozarius. Of not causing pain and so forth. So the Noda B'Yehuda, for example, was asked a question about hunting for sport. Okay, you just want to go hunting because everyone's going hunting. And the truth is, after you kill the animal, okay, you can't eat it, but you'll sell it to a non-Jew, or so you have benefit from the animal. So the Noda B'Yehuda says, we just don't do such a thing. Why? Because it develops Ozarius. It's a cruel thing to do. The fact of the matter is that I could see Rabbanim saying, listen, it's not Sar Baalei Chaim with the animal testing, but it's not something you should do because you should have a sensitivity. Mm-hmm. The point is that so Sar Baalei Chaim is one idea that animals are there for you to use. There's another idea, you be sensitive to them. Okay? And sometimes there's different halachic balancing. The truth of the matter is, once you get into that, developing the overall perspective on a lot of Jewish ideas become much more difficult. Like for example, I was seeing in terms of, let's say, in terms of Eretz Yisrael, the argument that it's our land. Because Gersh Baruch gave it to us, and it's right there in the Chumash and so forth and so forth. That's our argument. What makes someone else believe that argument? Because it's in our Chumash, someone else should believe it. So the truth of the matter is that
you have to look at historical dates.
That's if you want to talk with them. Right. And even when you talk with them, do you really have an argument? The fact of the matter is I'm not even going to the argument itself. I'm saying, do you understand how you can make this argument to another person? You understand that there's a problem because the person doesn't believe in the validity of this document. So therefore, can I really push that argument on the other person? Because it's my argument that gets into issues of my understanding of my argument in terms of its force versus someone else, and whether I can expect that person to accept this argument. It's very interesting. Let me go to the aside just on something else. I was on our blog, on Nishma blog. Nothing to do with it, so this is something different. On Nishma blog, the blogmaster Rabbi Walpole wanted to put up a clipping from dealing with an ex-Jews for Jesus guy who left that movement, became frum, actually got involved with Jews for Judaism, and so, but it's an old clipping. No, actually it was a guy in Baltimore by the name of Larry Levy. I know Larry, I met Larry years ago, but the clipping was pretty old, but he came across it and he liked what he saw and he wanted to put it up on the blog. So, and he asked me to take a look at it. So I looked at it. I saw the clipping, and it was a very nice presentation of why Larry got involved in Jews for Jesus and why he left. It was a very, very informative article. And while I was watching, it was on YouTube. I saw a clipping of a Larry King live show. Larry King used to be a big headline on CNN.
Did he die?
No, he's still alive. I think he says specials every once in a while.
Yeah.
But he had an issue of Jews for Jesus and the Jewish community.
He's atheist, by the way.
Right, and he's actually he's Jewish.
Jewish, but is it atheist?
Right. Okay. So the truth is that so Larry had two. So it was all the specific issue was the Southern Baptist mission to the Jews. They came up with a document that was specifically a mission to the Jews. So what happened was he had 4 people on the show. He had 2 rabbis, Rabbi Marvin Heyer from the Wiesenthal Center in L.A., and they had Shmuley Boteach, who's chassid. Okay, so they were there to represent the Jews, and why Jews are so offended so much by Jews for Jesus. Okay, and then they had the head of the Southern Baptist system, and they had the head of Jews for Jesus. So I was watching this, so I thought, I want to see what happens there. And what I saw was pretty straightforward. It's what I expected and so forth. One of they basically, the argument, the arguments were so. The issues I have with the arguments from a Jewish perspective is that you didn't really hit them from their perspective. You see, me saying this is what I believe, and you saying this is what I believe, good, so we disagree. Right, so and me saying, Rabbi Heyer's argument was you're trying to misrepresent yourself as Jewish. And their argument is, no, we are, we're the real Jews. And they say, no, you aren't. The truth of the matter is, what always gets me in these arguments, whenever I see these things, what always gets me is, first of all, no one ever brings up the issue of Torah Shabbat. Right? The truth of the matter is I always wanted to sit there and say to them, it said when they give you an argument from whatever they want to bring the text. They say it says in the Bible, blah 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 blah. So what do I care what it says in the Bible? Well, don't you believe the Bible is the Word of God? He says, why do you believe the Bible is the Word of God? I actually once did this with a many years ago. Someone asked me once to talk with a girl who was being approached by Jews for Jesus, and they quoted the verse and so forth to me, and then I said to him, and I said I don't. The way you explain the verse, I don't buy the verse. And they said, well, how do you understand it? I said, well, the rabbis say this and this and this. Now, let me explain something to you. I will accept your interpretation of the verse because I accept the rabbis. Now, what I was really doing was I was arguing the argument of Hillel to the non-Jew who wanted to convert. There's a famous Gemara in Shabbos, right? There's a famous Gemara in Shabbos. There are actually 3 different cases. Three different cases of non-Jews who wanted to convert when it came to Shammai Hill. Okay, so the truth is, one of the cases, the most well-known case is teach me all Torah in 1 foot. That's not the case here. There's another case where the guy comes and asks how many, goes to Shammai and says, how many Torahs are there? He says, 2. Torah Shebachtav, Torah Shebal-Peh. And the non-Jew says, convert me on the condition I only accept Torah Shebachtav. Shammai kicks him out. Yeah. Goes to Hillel and says the same thing. Converting Hillel says, Okay.
We're still
And then what? What?
We're still in what's still.
Well, that's not what he said. They
No.
don't have that.
No. Then he says no. See, that argument is a problematic argument. See, that's an example by a problematic argument. Okay, a lot of arguments people give against the Karaites, you really don't understand the Sadducees or the Karaites. Usually, okay, they didn't accept Torah Sheba'al Peh. So what did they accept? Okay, so the fact is that what they accepted was something most people don't understand. It's not that they understood there had to be explanations. The fact is they're actually closer to Reform Judaism than to our perception of fundamentalism, because they basically said that it's up to your own understanding of it. Okay, so anyways, that's not. I don't want to get into Sadducees and Karaites. I don't want to get into that issue of what they believe in. Okay, I want to compare them to the Pharisees, which are Chazal, of course. But the fact is that so guy comes to him and says, okay, convert me to condition, I accept Torah Sheba'al Peh. So he says, okay. So he says, but first you have to learn. So different ways of understanding Gemara, but he says, okay, you have to learn. The place you have to learn with the olive. You have to start with the olive base. So he says, so he teaches the guy the olive base. The guy comes back the next day and says, okay, did you learn the olive? Went over it, got it straight. Okay, good. So Hill says, so what letter is this? An aleph. Hill says, no, it isn't. That's a taf. Okay, and that's pronounced t. Guy's a little confused. Hill says, what's this next letter? And he looks and says, it's a bait. It's pronounced b. Or b. Hill says, no, it isn't. That's a shin. It's pronounced like this. Guy's getting really confused. He then does that with the gimel. He says, wait a second. Yesterday, you taught me that this was Aleph Beit Gimel. Now you're teaching me something different. Okay? So Hillel says to him, if you believe me to tell you what the letters are, believe me when I tell you there's a Torah Sheba'al Peh. Okay? Now what was Hillel really saying to him? What was Hillel really saying to him? He says, no, what? There's nothing in a text that has its own inherent validity. When you have a text, right? Right?
How can you really back that up any more than something being told to you? You're told in the text.
Right, you're told in the text that there was a D-Day. Okay, well how do you know if it's fiction or non-fiction? Hey, the guy just made it up.
They do have all these archaeologists, these findings of scrolls
and
things of
and someone tells you to accept it with some authority.
Right.
The reason
you didn't go and necessarily see it, but let's say you do go and see it, even that scroll.
You don't know if it's true or not. The truth of the matter is that any type of education you get, you first have to rely upon the teacher. Right? The teacher teaches you the Aleph Beit. The teacher teaches you. You have to know it. Now, you rely upon your individual teacher, and then you get verification because other people are speaking the same language. Or you get verification from the books. The truth of the matter is that the acceptance of truth begins with your acceptance of the teacher. That's what Hillel is saying. And what does that mean? What's the primary source of education? It's oral. It's not written. So the truth is that what Hillel is saying is Torah Sheba'al Peh actually has prominence over Torah Sheba'al Peh. The only reason you can accept Torah Sheba'al Peh is because Moshe Rabbeinu comes down and says, this is what a Kodesh Baruch Hu gave me. Right? When he sits there and says, Shema Yisrael, says, this is what a Kodesh Baruch Hu told me to write down here. Not only that, I'm telling you, Shema Yisrael. So the truth is the oral revelation is much more significant than the written revelation. So the truth is that if someone came up to me and said, it says this in the Bible, I said, well, how do you know the Bible is true? How do you know the Bible has any value? The fact of the matter is because the reason I accept it goes back to Chazal. It really begins with Chazal. So the truth of the matter is someone comes up to me and says, well, what is it? I said, listen, this is because I believe Chazal. So I said to this girl, the reason I said, what I eventually said to this girl is that, listen, the reason I can't accept Jesus or Paul's argument is because I accept the rabbis. I accept what Rabbi Akiva says. I accept what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says. Okay, they didn't accept it. I didn't accept it. So why? Because they have more basis.
Open to anybody.
Right.
And it goes back to that whole argument, like
so then what do
anyone has free being.
So what do you base your argument on? Coming up to me with a book and saying the book says this, then it gets into how I understand the book. I don't understand the book the way you understand it.
And where do you understand the book from?
What?
And where is the person
right. So therefore the argument is you want to accept Paul's interpretation of the thing. Fine. I want to accept Yochanan ben Zakkai's. Okay? But the truth is what I really wanted to get to was this other argument. What really got me is, I've seen this come up many, many times. I can't remember if Larry King asked the question or whether it was someone else, one of the rabbis asked this question. Basically, the argument that you believe I'm going to hell. You believe that Jews are going to hell because they don't accept Jesus, so you believe I'm going to hell. And I've seen this asked many times. And the answer I've seen was, not me. That's not me. It's in the book. Right? So it's basically, it deflects the issue. So I'm not making that moral judgment about you, is what the guy is saying. But what can I tell you? The book says it. Okay? And therefore they use that to deflect the question. They basically use it to deflect the question. What are they saying? They're saying that, me personally,
beyond me.
Yeah, you're almost like, to me, you're a nice guy. I'm sure I'm not. I don't have this terrible opinion of going to hell. But that's what the book says, and I believe the book. So therefore, I always wanted to respond to him. Oh, really? So you believe this book's statement? Why do you believe this book's statement? Why do you accept a book that says that such people are going to hell? Why do you accept that statement? Why do you accept that vision of God? People don't answer that question. It's like I believe in this vision of God. Well, wait a second. Why do you accept that vision of God?
I think just accepting. Some people are fine just accepting.
Right. The point is that
why are you accepting?
Right. So that's a question. Okay. And there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more going on. Those are harder questions. The point is a lot of people like simplistic answers. And the fact is that in our learning is much more involved in deeper analysis. But a lot of time, learning stops at pratim. Now, what you usually find more is in the Hasidic perspective. A lot of times in the Hasidic perspective, there's a little bit more look on the broader perspective. But usually it's narrow because it's within the specific perspective of that Hasidic perspective. So the fact is I think one of the reasons that Breslov is of interest to people, Chabad's of interest to people, is because there's much more of a policy perspective. You get a better picture of the overall picture, right? Okay. What the challenge is how you connect the picture to the pratim, especially if you open up the pratim to the entire spectrum of halachic opinion. Okay. Now the truth is what usually what people do get involved with is pratim, but a lot of times when they get involved with the broader perspective, it's usually not done with the same sophistication that they learn the pratim. And that's something that has always personally bothered me. That there's a need to learn the broader perspective with the same intensity and lumdus as learning the world of pratim. In that regard, it's also important to know the various different policy perspectives. So the point is that there's what I call a grander understanding of Torah when you take together the various different perspectives and try to put them together. Okay, so let's say you know there's a Satmar Rav, you know there's Rav Kook, right? You take all these and you try to put them all together. That becomes even a greater challenge.
Yeah.
Okay, so the truth is though is that's very much within in terms of a certain aspect of a different type of lumdus. But the truth is we don't live in a world that does that lumdus. What I usually find is, first of all, when people learn, even when they learn the Iyun, there's usually a focus on pratim, on halachic detail, which I'm not trying to take away from its significance. Second of all, when they do try to create a broader perspective, it usually is simplistic. They take together pratim, and then they'll use the Rambam's sort of like way out answer. I'm not saying way out. That's sort of like his sort of like answer that not all pratim could put together to create the overall global perspective, the Polish perspective, as a way not to accept the challenge of the prat. The truth of the matter is the Rambam said it, and the Rambam understood it, and he had his problems. The fact of the matter is that a lot of people still constantly dealt with problems. You do go with the idea, but you can't really totally understand the prat. And then a lot of times that's an issue. Let me give you one example of an issue for you guys to think about, and people in kosher can think about also. Okay, so it's a classic question. When I bring it up, it really raises issues. People don't really These are the kind of things that show you details in terms of really sophistication. It's the mitzvah of milah, right? So if you look in the mitzvah of milah, what's the point of milah? The point of milah is that you should be able to perfect yourself. So if you look in the chinuch's argument, right? The idea is the mitzvah of milah is because the Kodesh Baruch Hu leaves something unfinished, because your whole tafkid in life is to perfect it yourself. So the whole tafkid of life is for you to perfect it yourself.
Perfect what again?
Your own being. In this case, milah. For milah is perfecting. Milah is perfecting the human being. Milah is considered to be an act of perfecting the human being. The human being is born imperfect. Milah is a final act of perfecting it. Okay. Now, the truth is that that's not that wasn't a Greek perspective. Greek perspective is you were born perfect, and milah was an act of what do you call it?
Taking away.
Yeah, what do you call it?
Dehumanizing.
When you
defiling.
It's something like defiling. It was causing harm. It was like you were diminishing it, or defiling it. Okay, but the fact is from a Torah perspective, the classic answer said in the Chinuch, classic argument is the Kodesh Baruch Hu created you imperfect. Okay, because you have to perfect yourself. Okay, very, very nice. That's a classic answer. Okay, so two classic questions on that answer. What are the two classic questions on that answer? Well, there are two obvious questions on the answer.
Why were you born with a bris milah?
Because that's the whole point. You were born imperfect, so you perfect yourself.
Though there were some that, like Moshe Rabbeinu.
So the issue is that. But that's right. The Avos Rabbi Nassim lists a whole bunch of people who were born
with a bris.
Already, yeah. Okay, so why were they born perfect? So Avram was born imperfect and perfect himself. But the truth of the matter is that this argument, Yaakov was born perfect, was born with a bris. These people were born with a bris, and the argument is they were born tam. They were already born complete. The point is that there's a big inyan of perfecting yourself. It's actually not good that they should be born perfect. Right? Okay. Okay, so that's a good question. So that's a classic question. So the point is, according to that answer, you have to explain why some people are born with a bris. So already that's it. There's another obvious question. Any other ideas?
Why should it be a negative thing? Like
what?
that you that you're born.
That's a given. That's a given. I don't know why.
I mean, yes, the world we're humanly.
Yeah, but why the foreskin is imperfect? That's another question. I don't. In other words, we're being told that somehow this is an imperfection that you should perfect, like you perfect a human being by cutting off the oral, and cutting off the foreskin. That's a given. Okay. Okay, you're questioning why is it imperfect?
Why Ger doesn't have to?
He does.
Yeah, does he just prick it?
Unless he has a Mila. If he doesn't have a Mila, he needs Mila. If he is already circumcised, then the question is what happens there, and that's a whole list. But there's another obvious problem.
Okay, yeah.
There's a whole selection of human beings, right, who do not have circumcision, who do not have something. In other words, an act. Yes. If you say that there's a value in an act,
it shows men are.
Why didn't God correct an imperfection in a woman? That they should perfect themselves.
They got to give birth to children. They haven't heard that.
Wait. So the truth of the matter is, if you say there's an idea of being born imperfect,
right.
So you perfect yourself.
Right.
So, what about women?
Okay. What's the answer?
Not for now.
Okay.
Okay.
Does it have to do with what he said?
No. The truth of the matter is that there's already. The truth of the matter is it becomes a much more difficult case. It's imperfect or perfect or whatever. But the point is that there are different approaches I saw in the material of how to deal with it. But the point is that whenever I don't want to do it right now because it's a much more complicated issue. All I want to do is raise a question. Once you raise a question, just try to show the difficulty of policy considerations. The fact of the matter is that there's a need to analyze. People sometimes there's a need to analyze. Take care, and there's a need to analyze things. There's a need to analyze things in depth, and there's an understanding that a lot of times we come up with simple answers. Or we come up with answers and don't think beyond them. Okay? Okay? The truth is that if you ask questions on policy, it's a lot more difficult than people think it is. And a lot of times what you find is people, first of all, they don't put in all the.
So that's why you brought up things that are the bigger picture thing, and then there's the people learning very just specifically.
Right. And what happens is a lot of times when people learn the specific things, they lose sight of they focus on learning the specifics. When they start developing the broader perspective, they usually they a lot of times are guided in a very specific policy perspective. Policy perspectives to connect with details usually can be very difficult. So a lot of times it's sort of like you don't want to deal with it, because usually when you deal with it, you usually understand that there are issues in policy that makes it very, very complex. And then you have different answers, and then there's greater issues of why you deal with those, how you deal with those.
And there's a lot of people don't know the answer, so they don't want to make it more complex, so they'll just give you an easy way out. So they'll that will end up happening.
Right. And the fact is, a lot of times what you have is general perspectives.
And they were raised to not say, "Oh, I need to deal with these and find answers for people or something." They're used to not and being trained not to.
Well, a lot of times because our learning is so focused on the details, we don't know how to deal with these kind of questions when they're outside of the details. Okay? In other words, we're so focused on the details and so on and so forth. In other words, we are experts in micro study. Macro study, we assume that people with micro study will have equal ability in macro study. There are many, many, many Gedolim over the years that have that standard. The Rambam was an expert in micro study, he was an expert in macro study.
Well, they're the Rabbi, they're the head rabbis, but then the people.
The fact of the matter is, a lot of times, just because someone is proficient in micro study, doesn't mean they have the same proficiency in macro study. And that's and the problem is that a lot of times when people teach, they lose sight of this. A lot of times in learning, when people learn and so forth, they focus so much on the micro study that they're not taught how to really analyze in the same complex manner in their macro study.
Is that because their way of learning, thinking is not there to be able to do it?
Yeah, because the way of learning, and also
not to question.
And also because it's because of both reasons. One second, the process of micro study is different than the process of macro study. It's one reason, and we focus very much on micro study. The second reason is, a lot of times, because the way we usually give much more simplistic macro answers, because the macro answers usually are usually much more troubling. So the question I gave a Shluch Hatan, how you deal with this idea that, how does this work? Why do you have to go? Whenever you ask the question of why, that's usually much more tied to a macro study, understanding the purpose of the mitzvah, understanding the overall perspective. Usually, sometimes that's even more difficult than our micro studies. The fact is that you get into very tough issues, and sometimes you get. When I say simplistic answers, I don't mean answers which are totally unfounded. I'm talking about answers which have some basis, but usually without the fullness of the issue. Like, let's say you ask a question of what is love. Okay, so you explain love, you give an answer, and it's a nice answer, right?
You can't really explain it.
But the fact of the matter is, but not even with that, one of the big problems of understanding love is the relationship between sexuality and love. Why is it that I'm attracted to another person? Why is that love? Maybe it's just my physical drive. So the truth is what is the connection between my physical drive and love? Now, and perhaps I'll end with this story. It's when I've told this story before, but I'll say it again. Alex, you may have heard this story before. When I was at, thank you very much, Alex. When I was at YU, there was this blind date party between the sophomores in YC, the men's school, and the freshmen at Stern. So the girl from Stern who was arranging the connections happened to be in the lobby of the Morgenstern building at YU, and my friend knew her. So my friend goes over to her and says, "You set me up with my blind date yet?" She said, yeah, and so forth. And so my friend says, "Is she good looking?" And this girl said, "Are you interested in the body or the neshama, or the soul?" And my friend, I was standing like here, he was here, and I was standing a little bit over here. He said, if I was only interested in the soul, I'd go out with him, pointing to me. Now, the truth of the matter is at the time everyone was talking about, the love is in the neshama, and she loved the neshama, and so forth and so forth. And my friend was just being very honest. Yeah. The truth of the matter is that this girl was totally shocked. Now, the girl also was very nicely dressed and wore makeup and so forth and so forth. The truth of the matter is everyone loves that line, but the neshama and stuff like that. But the bottom line is do you really to understand what you're saying. The truth is that it's a very complex issue. And a lot of times when people throw out answers, they don't really deal with the complexity.
Right.
Okay, and that's just it. And the fact is people throw out answers. It's not that the answers are wrong. It's that the answers are avoid the complexity because they don't know where to go with the complexity.